Consequence Podcast Network.
My friendship to all of you precludes my involvement with any one of you. But if you wanna make love, then I do too, and I'll be right there behind you. All in the name of oh, all in the name of oh, all in the name of oh.
Greetings, constant listeners, and welcome yet again to another episode of The Losers Club, a Stephen King podcast brought to you by the Consequence Podcast Network. Do you guys smell that? What is that? What is that smell? Oh my God, it's a giant rotting corpse of a robo beam bear. Welcome to 1991's The Wastelands, The Dark Tower, Book 3. This is where we were going to cue Ryan Adams' Wastelands. Unfortunately, much like Shardik, he's been canceled, so you'll just have to use your imaginations. Before we board Blaine the Pain, let's introduce who we have with us today. I'm Mackenzie Meir Gerber, constant contributor to this podcast, as well as the Halloweenies. Who else from the old quartet of the Losers will be joining us today?
Hi there, this is Lara. Tonight we're going to party like it's 1999 honor stall. That's a reference to a later Dark Tower thing, but I thought of it and boy did I laugh. What else am I saying about myself?
We would like to know what version of the book you read,
yes.
And then also when you first read it, and how did you come across the Wastelands?
Okay, so I read the super cool Kindle version of the Wastelands. Whatever you can get on Kindle, whatever's hot in the Kindle shop, that's what I got. I actually didn't start reading the Dark Tower series until this year. I felt like a fraud having appeared on this podcast and not having read the Dark Tower series, so I just decided to go for it. And I've been reading them all on Kindle for that reason, and as a result, it feels like I've been reading the world's longest single book that just goes and goes, and I have no sense of where it begins and ends. But yeah, that's my story.
Cool. And then who else is hailing from Midworld today?
This is Dan, All Things Serve the Beam Flieger.
Oh.
And they do serve the beam.
They do.
We're here just to reinforce that. I think I first read this book in 2004. These were actually my first Stephen King books. So
Me too.
I trucked through the Dark Tower, so I read them consecutively, and it sounds about right that it would hit right in that period.
Yeah, no. And for me, I read the old Plume edition that my brother Justin had got me years ago. The first King books I read were the Dark Tower books, and I've said that before. Ultimately, he went to a used bookstore. I think it was the Ravenswood bookstore before it moved to Ravenswood. Bought me all of them.
Oh, what a good brother.
And then gave it to me for Christmas, I think. And then I'd always wanted to go back and start Drawing of the Three because I read The Gunslinger when I was in middle school and just never continued because when I got to the Lobstrosities, I thought I jumped the shark. Little did I know that book would end up being my favorite Dark Tower book. But up there is The Wastelands, though. I really love The Wastelands. I'm really excited to talk about it today. And that's right, we moved on to the next category, The Hook.
Ah. Yes. Don't you see? Don't you see how clear it all is? Not only can you see the future, I can change it. You can change it, exactly.
Is this very different from Drawing of the Three? I know I guess we could also talk about the structure and format at the same time, but it's structured a little bit differently, obviously. But what about The Hook?
I think I would say the quartet is basically starting to gel. They don't have Jake right away, but they've survived the beach. Everyone's getting to know each other a little bit. Things are sort of settling down, and we're starting to get an idea of, all right, what is this mission that we've all been gathered for?
Yeah, no, I agree. I feel like The Hook isn't very much different. I mean, they're still very much on a mission to continue drawing more characters to the cause, and which is just excellent. And I would say this book is probably the most expansive in terms of the lore. This is where you get all of the lore of Midworld, really. I mean, obviously they expand upon it in the future books, but this is the first time you hear a lot of things and you get a lot of beam information and a lot of King's Dominion in this book, referencing not only future books, but, just past Stephen King properties as well. Laura, did you have anything to say about the crux of this book, as it were?
Not really. I agree with the lore comment, and just this is kind of where it all blew open in my mind of like, what exactly is this series? What am I getting myself into? And it in a way, it really did hook me into wanting to read the rest. So
it's funny because the pop culture references really kick into overdrive here.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's like Beatles references. There's some of these things where you're like, okay, this is just, it exists. But now we're starting to get ZZ Top deep cut references, and you're like, what is happening?
Humphrey Bogart. You get it all. A little bit of every little taste of everything in this book. Okay, so we prematurely jumped into structure, but I'm gonna jump back into structure.
Look at me. Look at me, teacher.
This tale is told in 2 parts: the Book of Jake, aka Fear and a Handful of Dust, and the Book of Lud, with 3 chapters apiece. We start, however, with the argument, which is basically like a really nice little rundown of both the Gunslinger and Drawing of the 3 for those who hadn't read those books in a while. So that's nice if you need a refresher. But I'd actually say, even if you had just read those 2 books, it's good to read that before going into this, because there's so much going on in this series. It's nice to get a little catch me up before you jump into Wastelands.
Yeah, it's sort of like the Netflix preview. I always like watching those, recap of previous seasons.
Absolutely. No.
And also it points out to the creator, what they think is important enough that you should be paying attention to. So it's always helpful for, foreshadowing that's coming up.
I felt like breaking it up into the 2 parts that it does, it's funny to me because I feel like it's more, it doesn't feel like one half and another half. It really feels like 4 different parts where it's like Shardik and the race to get to the Jake section, and then that's like part 2, and then 3 is kind of like River Crossing and Lud, and 4 is like the conclusion of Lud and Blaine, right?
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it feels like that a little more.
Absolutely. I feel like you can really distinctly break it into parts, almost like this is an entire season of a show, and you have like 4 different episode arcs, separate, distinct locations, challenges. It could also be a video game, I guess. But that's just how my brain views things, because my brain is bad now. As an adult, it's bad. It's bad.
It's a definite departure from the way that Drawing of the 3 is, but it's also a departure from the Gunslinger. And I think that's the thing that I like the most about this series as we continue. The structures always change. It's not boring. It's not, plain Jane. You feel like you're reading something new. And like you said, it is kind of a bit of the world's longest book in a sense, but he does shake it up in that way. It's not just like, okay, here's part 3, part 4, part 5. You know what I mean? Like, which I think's cool.
Yeah, Drawing of the 3 is kind of a fever dream because Roland's got the infection. Eddie's going through withdrawal. The pace is really, it quickens, and there's a ticking clock in a way.
Oh,
and this one I feel like
Andrew Quick and TikTok, man.
Oh,
is that what you're alluding to?
TikTok. But this one now, the dust has settled a little bit. We'll show you Fear and a Handful of Dust. Wastelands reference.
Speaking of Roland and all of his ailments, I think we're going to move into our next category called Heroes and Villains.
I'm gonna have to kill this fucking clown. Welcome to the Losers Club, asshole!
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Roland, who is constantly in pain and turmoil. Just when you think he's better, he's now, this entire book, at least half the book, he's going insane. What do you think about our hero this book?
Yeah, I mean, he switched from physical ailments to mental ailments, just one on top of the other. Yeah, he's, in some ways, he's very contiguous as a character. Like, he just is the same old Roland, like a steady Eddie, if you will. No, that Eddie is not a steady Eddie. Hold on, I just confused myself. The point is I mean, I enjoy reading his, mental decline, and just because I think that it mirrors Jake's, and really the point of it is to lead up to when they reunite. In this one, it feels like he's paying the wages of sin for what he did to Jake in Gunslinger. In some way, I feel like that's Roland's whole deal, is he has to suffer and suffer and suffer for what he's done.
Yeah, Dan, do you think that did you enjoy the doubling aspect and the re-entry of Jake? We'll get to Jake in a minute, but do you agree with Laura that the suffering of Roland throughout this series almost?
Yeah, I mean it's painful parts just to read what this guy's going through, but there's a bit of the paradox here of, in one reality Jake is alive and one he isn't. And they have to close that in order to kind of move on with the mission. But in the meanwhile, Roland is not sleeping. He's tossing and turning. He's having night terrors. He's just not having a good go here.
And rightly so. I mean, he let this kid die. He dropped his death. I mean, we're like, oh, sad, poor Roland. But, he did inadvertently kill this kid. So it's like, I think he's getting what he deserves, I guess.
When he fought Court, his teacher, in the Dark Tower, or Gunslinger, God, they're all blurring together.
Yeah,
in the Gunslinger book, but he sacrifices his pet David, and I think that really sets the tone that this guy is willing to throw anything at his mission. He doesn't really care, and it's starting to catch up with him a little bit now.
Which is also interesting because there's an allusion of David and another character later on that we'll get to. So let's just walk through Roland a little bit on this journey. I thought it was interesting. On page 74, he talks about John Farson and the Civil War, which ruined Gilead, which you hear a lot more about Farson in the next book and that whole situation in Wizard and Glass. But he also says it took him 20 years to ride from Gilead to the Western Sea. And I always love when they throw these things in there because you never know. It's just such a color. It's just such a coloring of that world. The fact that, I mean, my grasp of Earth is pretty easy, and we know we can get around the Earth in a matter of days, a matter of hours.
88 days.
But on top of that, 20 years. And they were like, oh, they're trying to make excuses for you. And he's like, no. He's like, nah, bro, I was on a horse the whole time. And maybe I stopped here and there, but that's just like the span of Midworld is epic.
And I also think it's almost like stretching a rubber band too, where the distances keep increasing, and I think there's some trickery going on here.
And I wonder also if you're on the path of the beam, if that shortens or elongates. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's a shorter path. It's a more direct path. But when you're not, because, just traveling to the Western Sea, obviously he wasn't necessarily on the path of the beam per se, unless, when he was following Walter O'Dem, whatever, that he was going towards the tower or something like that. But
yeah, I mean, my understanding of it was that, because the beams are degrading, everything is degrading, the beams are the only place where things are even still holding together a little bit, and everything around it is stretching and eroding. So he needed to get to the point of that, it happens in this book where after they defeat Shardik, let's not talk about it. And
disgusting. Can't wait for the cemetery.
Yes. That's when they find the beam and get on the beam, and then things sort of speed up, which also comes up throughout the series, that sense of sometimes time seems to stop and then it speeds up again. And I do think the beams are playing a big role. Yeah,
no, and we're going to have a lot to talk about with the beams in our King's Dominion section, or things we glean along the beam section for the Dark Tower books. I also think it's really great, the introduction of how Roland's able to kind of keep the voices at bay with the key, and we'll talk about that a little bit more with Eddie. Roland, he's got there's just some great moments with Roland in this book. But I love the one part I really love is when he shows up towards the end and Gasher's there, and he's like, you, and he's just like, me, and blow his fucking head off. It's so good.
It's like
so good.
A little bit of legit badassery.
Yes. But Roland's great. I love him in this book. He's just as good. I think the best part about this book is it's the true. Now we have the gang. It's like Drawing of the Three was all the work to get here. Now we can have fun watching the interplay, watching them become gunslingers, and kind of the recapturing of or redrawing of Jake as well, which I think is just so cool, and Oi.
we actually have a Billy Bumbler in the studio today.
That's
Bentley the
right.
Corgi is here. So if you guys hear anything, that's just Oi chiming in.
Oi, the thing of evil.
But I think too, though, with the getting, the band's gotten together. I think Caffrey said that about the last book. It's getting the band together.
Yeah.
And now we're starting to train. And I think the book even opens with them doing target practice. But
Yeah, he's training Susanna.
Bullets are so precious, you don't actually fire. And I've always wondered if that is how, I don't know, if you could learn to shoot a gun by just pointing and clicking. And
Apparently,
how would you know?
because when Susanna starts opening fire on Shardik, she's just like blowing him away.
Yeah, and she gets thrown into it, and she's on Roland's shoulders, and he pretty much has to trust her to shoot the giant bear robot.
Oh gosh, I can't wait.
What a stressful...
Cannot wait to talk about.
Man. Baptism by fire.
Let's jump to that old bear robot as since we're kind of going in order here. Shardik the bear, or Mir, as it were. What do you guys think of this first introduction of? I remember when I was first reading this book, I saw the picture, the picture in this of Shardik with the satellite dish on his head, and just thought, what the fuck? It's such a nuts idea, and the idea that he's also some kind of Terminator almost. He's a robot on the inside with like skin and living tissue on the outside. What do you guys think about this beam creature, and what a beam creature is? I mean, I guess we could talk about that a little bit too.
Yeah, well, I love the descriptions we get of Shardik, and going to his cave and hearing a little bit of his story, how long he's been there, and there was this whole civilization that rose and fall, and they feared him. And it's sort of, I think it introduces us into this running theme of sentient machines, machines that seem to have self-awareness and a reflective, sad quality to them, because as disgusting as this creature is, we get his perspective for a minute, and it makes you sympathetic to him, or at least it made me sympathetic to him, because he's suffering, he's full of like maggots and shit. Yeah, I don't know, I'm just really stuck on the like sneezing and the worms coming out, like that will haunt me to my grave. Yeah, I think it's a really interesting concept. It's a very interesting mashup of lots of different sort of sci-fi ideas and fantasy ideas, and the little satellite dish on the head is good. And yeah,
it's funny, when I first read this, I thought it would play more of a major part, and then rereading it, you're like, okay, this is just a little side quest. I think sometimes you got to spice things up by throwing in a monster or some kind of creature. But the cool thing is too, so that every beam has a animal, I don't know, sigil, guardian. So you have bear and turtle, horse, dog, fish, rat, elephant, wolf, lion, eagle, and then bat, hare. And it kind of reminds me of like a astrology or zodiac calendar, but it's just each of these creatures has been sort of guarding or maintaining the beam. But even now, Shardik is half cyborg. He's sneezing maggots, which is a disgusting visual. And he seems like he's pretty much out of his brain.
Yeah, no, he's lost it. He's in pain. And I agree with you. I think once we kind of get to the dead, rotting corpse of Shardik, you do feel bad, because he's just lost his mind. He's not intentionally trying to hurt anybody. He's wandered from the door. He's no longer really protecting it. He's just kind of doesn't know what his purpose is. And with the beams breaking, it's crazy to think these guardians are also breaking down as well. And what do we think about the great old ones they mention a few times? It's interesting to me to think that these beam guardians maybe were not there at the beginning, or the tower. They introduce a lot of lore that they just kind of hint at, which is great, because I don't even know if they answer some of this stuff by the end of the books. But it's not unlike Lost. This is more about the characters and not about the mystery of the world. They introduce a lot of the world and keep that mystery there. But I think that's great, because you need to, because it definitely is more about these characters and where they are from point A to Z, rather than finding out exactly who created Shardik. Although these days, the adaptation's coming, where it's like a prequel series about Shardik being built.
Yeah, I hope we really get into
awful.
That. When they first encounter him, you think, oh, we're going to encounter 12 different animals during the course of this book. But that doesn't happen. They just reference them. Shardik as I recall, is the only Guardian that we really see. And I think maybe a lesser writer would have been like, well, now I have to, check every box here. I have to do 12 battles with giant animals. And that does not happen.
That's very true. You really think that we would explore all of that because there's, 7 books, and they never explore that.
Yeah, it would have been a lot of filler.
It's not important. Yeah, they don't
you
go over
got
that.
a lot of chapters out of that. But it's like, okay, we fought the giant monster. We're good. And I like to, it is very like action packed because Eddie has to climb the tree to escape it. And the bear is, swatting at him as he goes up the tree.
Yeah, let's jump back to our band of heroes and talk about Eddie and Susanna. We'll start with Eddie, though, climbing up that tree. Eddie Cantor Dean. Forgot he had a middle name. That's a great trivia question in the future for people to remember.
What is Eddie's middle name for a round of shots?
Exactly, yeah. No one will get it.
Can I interrupt really quick? So we did trivia Stephen King recently, and I took issue because the host at one point said, how many years between does it take, in his hibernation? And it's 27 years. And he said, we also would have accepted 30. And that's like that's a hard number.
Hell no. What?
I did not agree with that.
That's ridiculous. And I heard about that as well. And it's really sad. And we need to find these people and hurt them.
They're cowards.
I'm not
Army,
actually condoning violence. I don't think we're actually going to track this person down. But if anyone does do trivia, Stephen King trivia, and they try to pull that kind of number, definitely remind them that it's 27 is a hard number. Another, I will say the only other beam creature that we do get introduced even further is the turtle, and you get a lot of that, and we'll go into that as we continue. So Eddie's climbing up this old tree. He's scared to death. We get a lot more about Eddie and Henry, and even though Henry's dead in this book, we do see a lot more. I love Eddie's trajectory on this because he's starting to realize that he truly is a gunslinger. We see him kind of leave his naivety and his childhood behind in this book. He has a real purpose. I mean, just from the whittling of the key, everybody has a purpose in this book, and you see their contribution to the quartet, which is another thing. I've got here a dictionary of all the old world words, and I'm just trying to run through these real quick because we're going to continue to talk about all this stuff and just to get this in people's heads. Old star is north, and old mother is south. Ka is our destiny or our fate. Tet is a group of people with the same goals, so Ka-Tet, and so that makes sense, and that's the little group with Roland and Co. Another thing I thought was really funny. I'll leave that for Aunt Talitha, but there's something called the White, and they bring up a lot, which is real fun. Kef is life force. It's also a joining of the minds between quartet members, and one of my personal favorites is Thanky. We'll be saying that a lot through the rest of these books. Thanky Sai. Which is funny because I've always said Thanky Sai, but it's just Thanky. Sai is the character's name. I always thought it was Thanky Sai was the saying. But
yeah, I have so many group chats and threads, and we always, when somebody it's like, hey, can you get that for me? Thank you, Sai.
And then we also realized that the word char means death, which is a fun little Charlie the Choo Choo reference. And also another favorite I forgot about was Roland saying "watch me" as saying we have a deal. And I like that. But I don't think he does that very much in the rest of the books. But I thought that was like a fun little piece of slang that they worked in there. Eddie, of course, not a lot of slang, but they do mention that Eddie and Susanna have now started to pick up on Roland's speak, which I think is great because that's how it is with your friends, with your best friends. You start hanging out with one another and you start to pick up on little idioms and little things and start speaking like them a little bit. A lot of people, when they're around me and my friend Chris, my best friend Chris DeSavito, they always say that we sound exactly the same, or at least his wife does, and I never pick up on that, but we lived together for years, so it's very funny to think that the little things that you pick up on are just the way you speak as well.
Yeah, my buddy Dan Caffrey, fellow loser, growing up, he speaks so rapidly, like his brain works really quick, and there were times where I had to translate for him, where he would be speaking at someone and they would say, I don't know what you're saying, and I was like, oh, he's trying to get across this, and he's the kind of guy, too, that me and him would both be speaking at the same time to one another, but we'd communicate that way. But yeah, you're right, though. You pick up on these little like ticks that people have, and it's kind of nice with Susanna and Eddie because Roland is the outsider, and they're kind of thrust into this world, but now they're starting to kind of get their bearings, and it's like, hey, this fucking guy, he's a little strange. Like, he's got something going on. And I think what's cool is in the course of the story, they're starting to pull more of Roland's mythology out, and at a certain point too, they're like, look, we got to sit down and just have you explain shit.
Yeah, I love it. They say that multiple times, like, when are we going to get your story?
And he's like, one more day.
He's like, yeah, we'll tell, that's another story for another day, which is great because that's pretty much the majority of the next book. It's like you got what you asked for. I would say 90% of the Wizard Glass is a backstory. So but it's one of the best.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch a little more on Eddie and Henry and how that kind of emerges. I just think it's interesting because normally I would be like, oh, we already got this. We're just rehashing their relationship from the last book. But I think it has symbolic weight in this book because as he's coming into his own, he's sort of purging or exorcising the last of Henry. Maybe not the last of Henry, but most of Henry from him as he's sort of transforming into gunslinger Eddie instead of addict Eddie. So I think that especially the way that they actually appear as their younger selves, and Jake gets a glimpse of that, it does something for the character. It makes you sympathize with him even more, and makes the moment when he succeeds with the key have more gravity.
Absolutely. I think another huge thing is when we find out that he had a sister. And is this the first time we find this out? I can't remember if they mentioned her at all in Drawing of the Three.
I think it is in Drawing of the Three that we learn that. I could be wrong because, again, they're all bleeding together, but I'm almost positive that we get we get some of that early stuff.
I think you do.
Yeah.
But in terms of finding out that she died in a car accident, watching hopscotch, and it's brutal because she was 4 years old or something.
Mm-hmm.
But it's weird to know there's another member of the Eddie clan out there. I think that Eddie's trajectory in this book is instrumental. Roland kind of talks about him as being David, as being like the Hawk. And I think that's really interesting.
And also, I think Cuthbert, right? Not Ellie.
Yeah,
I confuse
no.
him, but Cuthbert was kind of a smartass, and Roland has very little patience for humor, but he does, and they get into it in future books that sometimes it's nice to have a charming diplomat around, and I think Eddie kind of does keep the morale, even when he goes over and makes too many jokes. He still, he adds a little bit of levity to things, and it helps the group, the quartet. Yeah,
and then also the idea that that Roland's kind of replacing his old quartet. They even say I think Elaine is very much like Susanna, and they just. I've never really picked up on that, but I kind of love that because I love those characters, and we get more of them obviously in the next book.
I think we get a bit of Jake having the shine a little bit, or the touch, which is, I can't remember which of Roland's original quartet. Was it Elaine?
Elaine.
Yeah.
Elaine. It's I love it too because it's all like names that are spelled slightly different. So I'm like Alain. I'm like Elaine.
And then my friend Lenny, my brother's friend Lenny, and we grew up with him. He listened to the audiobooks, and the audiobook person that was reading would always pronounce Cuthbert as Cuthbert.
Yeah.
And I really hope that is the actual pronouncement of it.
Yeah, Cuthbert, Alien, and Roland.
yeah, Roland.
Approach Gilead.
Sounds like Tim Heidecker's here. Yeah, but I think Eddie also, it's this great connection because somewhere along the lines he actually met Jake, and that blows my mind as well. I love that kind of weird disconnect that is now connected in this book that doesn't need to be there, but I totally get it and buy it. And the idea of Dutch Hill and the mansion being this haunted house, this kind of I wonder, that made me wonder, because it is kind of like a doorway that's being protected, obviously, by this like demon thing, and that's going to be instrumental in getting Jake back to Midworld with our gang. But do you guys think all doors are guarded by some kind of entity or oracle or something? Because a lot of them in Drawing of the Three are not. So what's so special about this one being protected, or is it just happen to be the house? And we were talking about that a little bit before we started, Laura.
Yeah, I was unclear on that, if there was supposed to be some kind of internal logic or reasoning for it, because, again, I'm jumping ahead a bit, but in some books we get the thinnies at sort of the passage between worlds, and the ones that Roland finds, they almost feel like shortcuts or cheats, and it was Walter that even allowed him really to gain access to them, or that was how I read it in the last book anyway, was that he had the palaver with Walter, and that was what led to him being able to find the three doors. So it suggests that they were more like man-made versus these eternal doors that have their guardians. Trailing off.
No, yeah, thinking on that point, I think it's also interesting that this is a door that is created by the quartet. I mean, Eddie draws the door. He kind of forced this door into existence through using the Oracle circle. And so it's almost like this door shouldn't be there. And that's why it's kind of on both fronts protected by, some kind of evil entity, which I think is also pretty cool, that when the quartet's there and they're strong enough, they can create a doorway.
And which is a reference, without spoiler, to book 7, where drawing things into reality becomes a big part.
Very true, very true. Eddie also discovers the snakes, the electronic snakes, and North Central Positronics Limited. Now, I love North Central Positronics. I mean, they created some of my favorite giant bears, like Shardik, and other strange robots that we'll meet. Do you guys love North Central Positronics as much as I do?
I do, and I actually follow a subreddit called Shitty Robots, and it's just robots that probably shouldn't exist or are really crappy. So the idea of these animals just having a miserable existence, the snake is just like not even wiggling; it's just like convulsing, and
they're all created by North Central Positronics. Robots have no real purpose, or at some point did. No, I love that. There's a T-shirt I found the other day of just North Central Positronics. It's like a strange logo. I've got to get it. It's so obscure.
That's a good deep cut.
So obscure. I think they also mention page 171, the Last Starfighter and the Dark Crystal, when kind of talking about the look of the world. Which I thought is interesting. I always just love when they throw stuff like that in there. And the Dark Crystal is very pertinent right now with the new series that just came out on Netflix. So if you've seen the Dark Crystal, you've probably seen a little bit of what Stephen King thought Midworld might look like.
Can I do a little side jag here for a second? Sorry,
yeah,
I'm filling in the void.
Sure.
So the time that I remember becoming cognizant involved the Dark Crystal, because I was about 4 years old and I was at a video store and I was like, Mom and Dad, I want to rent this movie. And they were like, you rented this 2 months ago. And I had no recollection of it. But then I was like, oh my God, like I'm starting to get memories now. Like this is now I'm remembering. And it was a big moment in my life.
That's crazy.
Maybe you were actually hit by a car, and then in that timeline you watched the Dark Crystal. But
Dan was doubled.
You got doubled, buddy. You're a double Dan.
For like what, like 2 months? And then you weren't insane anymore when you were able to get Dark Crystal back in your hands.
That's all it takes.
Okay, well, I'm sure we'll continue to talk about Roland and Eddie as we continue, as well as North Central Positronics. But let's move on to Susanna Dean, who is at the beginning of this book being trained by Roland, clearly the best gun of the group, which I love. It's like Susanna to me is kind of a bit like Bev, like she's just like an ace with the weapons, and which is great. I think that's so cool for this character.
I really like that in this book she gets more agency because she's not like dealing with having, you know, these two personalities warring within her. She's getting to be Susanna and not Odetta or Detta. So she's really coming into her own in a lot of ways, and it's really good to see her just gunslinging away. I want more and more of that Susanna. Like and she like Eddie has some very distinct moments of purpose between, it sort of bookends the book, like taking out Shardik and then being able to figure out the she goes into her mind as Detta to solve the thing on Blaine, the little. What, you know, words
the console, the number console.
Yeah, the thing.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. You have her, Roland's teaching her the face of your father lesson in the beginning, which is just really cool. I love that line. It's page 31 of the Plume book where she's about to blow away Shardik, and she says, "I kill with my heart, motherfucker." And I was just like, yeah. I'm like, yes, she is a gunslinger. Like
she is the killer
tried
instinct.
And true. Yeah, absolutely. She's also the one. I mean, she's the real hero of this book. She's also the one that, like, you know, takes on the Oracle and then turns the fucking around on him, which could be really, really. We'll talk about that scene in Cemetery, but the way she flips it and is like, no, fuck you, and then like you see the demon weakening. That's pretty fucking awesome. And then, you know, and then she's the one. She leans on Detta to find the prime number sequence to get onto Blaine before they all get blown to hell. I mean, she is hugely the hero in this book. And it's so great because, you know, they never once in all those sequences, her handicap doesn't enter into it at all. You know, she's there and she kicks ass. In terms of getting her from one place to the next, sometimes there's some trouble. But I love that they give this character so much more in this book in terms of that kind of stuff going on. It's just awesome.
I realized while reading that I forget that she doesn't have legs for large portions of the book, which is awesome because you're just seeing her as a fully fleshed out character. No pun intended. I mean, it's rare that you get a character like her in a lot of ways. You know, and she, it's good.
No, and I also agree because in the Drawing of the Three, we get so much talk about her and her disability and being in the wheelchair and just them trying to get her over these mountains and stuff. I mean, it's like, we got it. So now this book, we can kind of just focus on the character, which I think is perfect because that's exactly what we do with those two, with Eddie and Susanna. And then now that we've gotten through our first half of the quartet, we draw another character, Jake. So Jake comes back. When you first read this, did you think Jake was going to come back ever? Do you remember what you thought when you first read the books? Did you think that Jake was going to end up coming back and be a huge part of the rest of the series? Or was it truly a surprise?
I think once Drawing of the Three, once they kind of had to deal with him and Mort, right? The killer.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I can see this guy maybe coming back, but I didn't. This is the kind of book that you waste time trying to predict.
Yeah,
it's so
absolutely.
wacky. Jake, I have mixed feelings. Of all the characters, he's the one I probably connect with the least. But
aren't you have that inner kid in you still?
No, it's long dead. No, I just think he's the heart of the group, I guess, in some ways. I don't know. I just don't really connect with him as much.
I connect with Jake a little bit.
You're the Jake of the group.
Didn't you ever feel like you were a kid that felt like you were destined for bigger things? Like you could just walk through go down a manhole and be in another world or something? Didn't you always think there was something around the corner that was just...
I did not keep a go bag for when I was going to get my Jedi training. That I did not do that.
As we all know, I'm a big Star Wars fan, so I did, and fuck you, Dan.
We'll do a separate discussion on Star Wars, but hey, great. Disney's doing a good job. You must be happy.
Oh! You know what? Oh God! You know it's for the kids. And Freddie Prinze Jr. had something to say about that recently. And if you can YouTube that little rant, which is actually quite entertaining. Jake. I think it's cool when we find out that Jake just got the problem with Walter. Let's talk about Walter O'Dim / Randall Flagg, the big reveal in this book, really quickly because there's not a lot to talk about. But the idea that Jake got Mort confused with him because they kind of both looked, or the priest, there was a priest there on the street when Mort pushes him, and he thought it was the Man in Black because they were both wearing robes. And
I think Mort is dressed as a priest and pushes him, and that's why he, like, when he's seeing him hovering over him, he was doing it as all, like, 'cause he dresses like trustworthy folk. And everyone, you should always trust a priest.
Yeah, apparently. But I think that is interesting, that I feel like there's so much like, okay, well, explaining away confusing things from the earlier books because he's still trying to kind of flesh out where this is going to go. And then I love at the end when he's just like, oh, Walter and Martin, oh yeah, they're both one and the same, and it's Flag. And in just that one sentence where we find out it's Flag, you're just like, okay, this all makes sense, and I'm going to give it a pass because this is so great that it's tying in to the Stand.
Yeah, and I think when he wrote it, King, he was leaving himself a few outs. I don't think he fully knew who these characters were, and he's actually gone back and retconned in the new editions of the Gunslinger to make it clear that it is Flag. But I think, he was just leaving himself a couple avenues of like, well, we got to bring Mort back. He could be Flag, the Man in Black could be Flag, and classic writing technique by King.
This guy, he's just changing along with the book. In that sense, it is like Lost. He's just going with it. He had no real plan in sight.
It would annoy me more if I didn't enjoy this series so much. I don't know what it is. It's all these things that would piss me the hell off with like any other series, any other writer, but I don't know. It's just enjoyable because I don't know. There's something about the Dark Tower.
You also kind of give it a bit of a pass, like you were saying, because after the third book, we didn't think that there was going to be any more, I say that as if I was reading them at the time, but a lot of people didn't, because he just never went back to it forever. And then I don't think he went back to it until after his accident. Yeah. So I think people were just happy to see it resolve. And I know some people have some hot takes on some of the future books, but obviously we'll wait to talk about those. But getting back to Jake, sorry, Walter. I love that sequence when Jake's like opening the doors in the school, and I think he opens up the girl's bathroom door and he's like, oh, sorry, I thought it was the desert, and like leaves. Like there's just like all these like great like little bits like that. He starts seeing a lot of the turtle, the graffitied of the turtle slogan. Guy gets to view the rose. And I think that's another reason why the Dutch Hill Mansion is so close to where the rose is. And I think that there's protectors around whenever roses show up, I feel like there's like some kind of protectors there, like you can, like the dandelion in the future, and that's a little nod to something in the future book as well. I think one of my favorite parts is when Jake is having the visions around the rose and he sees Allie from the Gunslinger. Like,
that
in
was
the weeds.
unsettling. That's
like really creepy, and that's a deep cut too. You got to be a tower head for that one.
A real tower head.
But the whole Jake section could be really boring and drawn out, but I just found it really interesting, his whole essay, and then when he reads it and it's all about the Dark Tower, and I love that, how that kind of just comes out in him as he reaches the mansion and things. Like he just feels like like the mansion's alive, like things start, as he reaches the door, things just start to get nutty, and things continuously get more and more kind of like a pat on the back to him in terms of knowing that there is something else out there, and he was right the whole time.
Yeah, and on the topic of the essay, so he turns in for a homework assignment, sort of a scatterbrain, like William S. Burroughs rearranged thing of like the tower is everything. It's this, it's that. It's a kind of poetry, and he's like mortified after, and then the teacher's just like, and he's like, this is brilliant, and he's like, is this supposed to mean this? Is this supposed to mean that? And I thought that was a really funny moment.
Yeah. Oh no.
That's one of my favorite little moments, because when I first read the essay, I'm like, this reads like beat poetry, and then that's exactly the reaction the teacher has, and I was like, called it. Yeah, it just is an enjoyable moment.
Mr. Bissett is a pretty good teacher. That letter that he gets from that one teacher that's like, hey, look, we all have problems. Like, if you need an extension, all this stuff, like, I don't know any teachers that would have done that. Like, this kid must be pretty special. And again, if Jake truly does have the shine, then maybe he's kind of they're noticing something else is up and a little bit more willing to bend with his character. But yeah, I dig Jake in this. I love that he comes back. I think it's just more like fodder for the canon. Like I think ultimately we're going to get, I think the more the merrier, because down the line there's some real stakes there with who lives and who dies, or if people die. You know what I mean? Like you really are invested in the team and who's going to make it to the end, I also think Jake in this story, I mean, he takes a lot of shit in this over the course of this book. I was thinking about it and I'm like, we were talking about how it's broken up episodically. I mean, step one, he's dead but alive and remembering his multiple deaths and then goes insane. Step two, he gets demon-doored into this world and has to face off with this horrible monster that almost eats him. And then like step three, gets the shit beaten out of him by like a weird pedophile that keeps talking about his butt. And then, I mean, he just, good God, I feel bad for this kid. Jake is very much like Roland. They're just constantly tortured, but Jake for no reason.
Yeah, he didn't do anything wrong. He's getting like tossed around.
He's just getting the worst of it the whole time. It's like, why do you want to go back to Midworld where all this, immediately get taken away by Gasher, and just like, and then threatened the, pedophile-esque stuff going on.
Gasher's just like, I'm gonna stick it up your bum.
Yeah, I can't wait. Can't wait to talk about Gash.
But yeah, Jake, you're right though. He really does suffer. Maybe I'm softening on him a little bit. But
all right.
The thing is,
we're gonna get you there, Dan.
But I associate with the movie. I really did not like the performance of the kid in the Gunslinger movie. Yeah. And he is a complex character in the books. It was just such a misfire. I'll save my rant. I've already talked
We will talk a little bit, though, about the adaptation because there's a lot of Wastelands in there. But let's round out our quartet with one of the best entries of the quartet. A great drawing. Oi, the Billy Bumbler. Oi. And I love how he gets his name by trying to say boy, and he can't say it, which is great. I forgot about that, honestly, until I started reading this.
He's like a raccoon weasel with a long neck, kind of a corgi, and he has parrot-like abilities.
It's really funny because I picture like them doing this in reality, if Oi was ever actually going to be on the screen, I just picture it being like Miko, the raccoon from Pocahontas, like in Disney animation style, not even trying to make it look like it's really there, like just totally wackadoo and weirdly on the screen.
Oi is in definite danger of becoming the Jar Jar Binks of the series, but he doesn't. I still like him. I like the little guy.
Yeah, I think it's hard. It's one of those things where you understand why he's probably never going to be on the screen. They're never going to introduce Oi because it walks such a weird line of being. However, I don't know. I mean, now that we got Guardians of the Galaxy, we got a raccoon talking and walking around and being, and people just accept it and don't laugh at it. I mean, well, there's obviously parts where they laugh at it because it's supposed to be a comedic character, but I think that it could definitely work. I mean, in this day and age with the CG that they have, that kind of character could actually work really well.
And he does play some importance in the series as it goes on. And, kind of like the way Roland had David, I think Jake has Oi. And they create this bond that's very important. And, they definitely save each other's ass a few times.
Yeah, and I love the idea that Oi is also... or just Billy Bumblers used to be like these things that were really, present around the time, the old days, and they were known as like good luck if there were Billy Bumblers around and stuff. So I kind of love how Oi is just a bit of this outcast. I think they say that he was something like bit his leg, and they were like, oh, it looks like another Billy Bumbler got
sort
to
of a
his
dire
leg.
wolf in this.
And they kind of a bit of an outcast, just like the rest, just like all of this crew. So it's pretty perfect that they bring him in. Now we talked about Shardik earlier, and I'm saying this because he's a protector of the beam. So even though he goes crazy, I still consider him to be a hero of Midworld. But let's move into some of the more random characters, and then we'll get into some of the villains. When we get to River Crossing, we meet Aunt Talitha and the crew of just kind of Midworlders that are still trying to live a life, still trying to make it on their own. They're not bad guys. They're not grays. They're not. What are we calling them? Pubs or pubes?
Pubes all the way.
Pubes. I that's how I was always reading it. So River Crossing is very interesting because we get to see Roland truly being an old school gunslinger. And I think Eddie and Susanna see that, and then they really start to see like, oh wow, there was a time where this was the norm, and they treat him like a knight of the round table, and which is also great because there's no section for this, so I'm just going to talk about it right now. There's multiple times that they mention the round table and Arthur and the Arthurian legend and everything, and obviously they double down on that as we go on. But like Walter is mentioned constantly in this book as the ageless stranger, and they say that he's also known as Merlin or Marlin, which is very interesting. Eddie mentions that Roland's companions have similar sounding names to those from King Arthur, like Elaine and Cuthbert, and those are just their names that sound like they would be Knights of the Round Table. Susanna mentions that the speaking circle looks like Stonehenge, which is also something that's tied very much to the Arthurian legend. There's a whole bunch of that in this book, not to mention Lord of the Rings references, as well as, some of those are pretty blatant. But also a few Wizard of Oz. But I'll talk about those a little bit later.
Yeah, and on the Arthurian, because in Eyes of the Dragon, Flag is kind of the antagonist, but they mention that he kind of goes into the woods and comes back every few hundred years as a different wizard.
Exactly.
And one of them is like Marlin.
Yeah.
It's spelled a little
it's totally
different,
it's
definitely
totally
Merlin.
the connection there. And I think they're laying the seeds in this to get to that Flag reveal, which is great. But Aunt Talitha, what do we think about old Aunt Talitha and her interactions with Roland and Co?
I like her. She's a tough old broad. And that's like an archetype that I really enjoy, where she's kind of the matriarch of this group. And, she's old, but you're still afraid of her because she'll threaten to kick your ass.
And I also like, we meet Mercy and Cy, Bill and Till, the twins, which is kind of ridiculous. But that I like that little dinner sequence because, I just love the description of all the food. It's like Harry Potter at Christmas time. Yeah. We finally get to actually get this great description of this whole like meal. Like they're actually living pretty well. There's not a lot of muties involved in their town. River crossing, and I think river crossing it shows up in the Dark Tower movie as well, right?
Yeah. What's funny is the neighborhood next to mine growing up, I lived in Hunter's Ridge, and the next door was River Crossing.
Oh.
So when I see things like this, I'm like, wow, the Dark Tower really is permeating our world.
And you don't connect with Jake?
No, forget Jake. But one thing too, though, I did like about that dinner scene is that they do call out that you see his diplomacy. Like Roland, like you said, he is more of a knight. He's not just a fighter or a killer, but he knows how to do these gestures, and he's got these proper manners and etiquette. And you can tell he's really impressing the people when he pays homage and respect. But he also notices that we can't stick around here because these people will put us to work. Hey, go fix the roof. Hey, we need help with the plumbing. And he's just like, we got to dip out.
Laura, did you love River Crossing as much as we did?
No. I mean, it's fine. I think it's sort of like, given all the rest of what happens in the book, it's just kind of there for me. It almost feels like it's there to, one, just show that, he is this knightly figure and give you a different perspective on him, and do the fantasy trope of like, let's have a big meal and talk about things, because I do think even in one of the intros, King writes about how he wanted this to be like a Lord of the Rings, like a vast epic thing. And so some things I think he's doing like purely as tropes. That's why I'm like, meh, move on. Let's get to Lud.
I agree. I think that it's very exposition heavy in terms of explaining the groups that are living in Lud and the prior war.
Yeah, and I get why it's there and what it does for the pacing of the book and stuff like that. I don't hate it. I'm just like, I don't know. When I was trying to think of all the characters and analyze them, I was just like, then you got the old, he's sad Jerry. Okay. And then like, they're just, all right.
They're not. I mean, I think Aunt Talitha, just because I like the name, she could ring true with me throughout the rest of the series. But I always thought that they met them in Lud. I forgot about River Crossing altogether. Reading this the first time through, but I do like how they have a little pit stop. And I think the best part of that is when they leave, and Jake's like, "Why are we leaving them?" And they're like, "Well, if we stayed, it would only have been harder to leave." Later, like it's harder. The hard thing to do is like leave right now because it's cut and dry. They're gonna, who knows what their fate is, but I guess we kind of figure out their fate.
They seem
too.
like they're kind of doomed.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving from the old river crossing back into Earth. We have some rando characters like Calvin Tower, who we meet, where Jake gets the Charlie the Choo Choo book and the Book of Riddles.
I love the bookstore scene too, because
Yeah,
it's like you think of these two, intellectuals just playing a game of chess that's probably taking 3 months to finish, and it's like, who hangs out at a bookstore all day and chimes in and it's like, oh, pipe down, you don't know what you're talking about. Like, let the boy have the book.
And the name of the place is the Manhattan Restaurant of the Mind, which I always kind of loved. And then obviously the blatant nod of Calvin Tower being, I like when he mentions that later on. They're like, Tower? What? Like it's like this. It's so funny.
Tower.
Oh gosh, yeah, it really is that kind of reveal. Okay, let's move into our villain section and get to the nitty gritty here. Let's go through the more minor villains first before we get to the big ones. Gasher, what do you guys think about Gasher? The introduction of the pirate Gasher.
He wants to get into that boy's butt.
Give me the booty, boy. I've been watching Peaky Blinders recently.
Yeah.
I imagine the Tom Hardy's character where it's just that thing.
You can't even understand what he's saying.
Jack, underground lair. Just like indecipherable, but that's terrifying because it reminds me of like Mad Max.
It's funny though. I totally picture Tom Hardy from like Revenant. Like his character from Revenant is Gasher, Oh my gosh. Yeah, Gasher is disgusting as hell. I mean,
everything about him is as grotesque as can be. He's got like boils and pus, and he's like picking his nose and wiping it on things, and he's just like, I'm gonna get into your ass, boy. And like, he's terrifying. Like, legitimately, the moment when he gets taken by Gasher is like, I'm just like, no, you don't give him away to the old rape man.
And I remember when I was first reading the book, I did not like Gasher's character, and I didn't like what was happening in that moment because I'm like, we spent half this book bringing Jake back and just to be taken away and almost immediately. I didn't like that twist. I like that they wrap it up in this book though, and that he's immediately back with them, because I would not have liked if it was another cliffhanger of Jake not being there. That would have been really dumb.
Yeah, the dramatic tension of separating characters and having them reunite. I kind of feel like once you reunite, let's move the story forward. Like the show Preacher, I love the comic, but they keep separating the characters, and you're just, after a while, you're like, just keep them together so we can move ahead.
And not to harp on Lost again, but man, the last 2-3 seasons of that is just people constantly changing sides and going to the other crew, or I'm with them now, or no, I'm evil, or I'm with them. And it's like, oh God, pick a side and let's move the story forward.
Yeah, it's more dramatic, like not will they get there, but have them get there and then have the characters react. To me, that's more interesting than will they, won't they.
And that's why I love the entire Dutch Hill mansion sequence, just because finally they're all together. And I guess we could talk about Dutch Hill and the mansion and that villainy. What did y'all like Dutch Hill as a mansion?
Y'all like Dutch Hill?
Yeah, it was cool. It was tight.
Yeah, it's funny because on the reread, I was less into the Jake parts, and I remember the first time I read it being like, wow, this is really exciting. This house is sort of a living, breathing thing. But on the reread, I was like, I just want to get back to Roland and the team.
See, I disagree, only because I didn't see that as more of a Jake part, as more of a Henry and Eddie situation when they go to visit it, and like just how scared they are of it. I think we all had kind of like a haunted house growing up that we all kind of thought was haunted, or just some kind of landmark that probably was just some dilapidated old building or something. But I like the idea of working that in. It still really resonated with me, but only because of when we get to King's Dominion, Laura had an idea, which I agree.
Yeah, I do like the depiction though of it's more in like the artwork in the books.
Yeah.
Of the house, like the boards, the 2x4s are forming almost like a dragon's head. And they kind of did it in the Gunslinger movie, but there's just certain, you can look it up online or we'll post it on our socials, but it's a really scary image of just like this living house kind of trying to eat Jake.
Yeah, and I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the illustrations real quick that Ned Dameron does. I love these illustrations. I love how they change from book to book. It's always someone else's perspective, which is great, because if it was the same person doing it, I think it'd be like this is what it looks like. This is what it looks like. But the fact that we're always getting a very subjective viewpoint of the world, and sometimes really abstract with Dave McKeon's artwork in the next book. Was there a particular piece of artwork that resonated with y'all when reading this?
Well, I'll just say that it got completely left out of all the Kindle editions, which is a pity. You know, it's one of those things I kind of wish I had. I mean, I've Googled and seen like that Charlie the Choo Choo and all this kind of thing. I didn't realize that it was one artist doing this throughout the series. So got nothing.
Right. No. And it's just through this book. Each time it's a different artist. But the one that sticks with me the most is this is what you're talking about, right? The picture of the house and Eddie drawing the door, and it's so great. It's not what I picture when I'm reading it, because the description of the character, the Dutch Hill Mansion coming to life, is more like a human-sized person just kind of made out of wood and boards and things. But yeah, the artwork's great, and my favorite though is when they get to the Wasteland stuff and you see the creatures and Blaine kind of just like flying over everything, and just the winged creatures and stuff, and obviously
like pterodactyls.
Yeah,
and
it's really cool
combined,
and definitely adds to just the world and the lore, the look of it, I guess. But Dutch Hill Mansion, I think, is cool when Henry talks to Eddie about hearing the two kids from Norwood Street went in to bump uglies, and the cops found them with their throats slit and blood drained out of their bodies. I kind of thought that was cool, the idea of vampires existing in this world. Obviously, as we move forward, that might be something you want to remember. And then on page 212, once again, he writes, once the door is closed, there is an illusion. I'm sorry. He doesn't write. This is me talking about this. Once the door is closed, there's an illusion again made about a piece of wood sticking out of the ground, like the sword in the stone. Is another reference to the whole Knights of the Round Table thing, which is just, it's a fun little parallel, I guess, in this alternate universe. But yeah, Dutch Hill Mansion is really cool. We'll have more to say about that in a future section. But I think it's a cool villain for Jake and the crew. Getting back to Gasher's boss,
Gasha,
the TikTok man,
Jason Mantzoukas.
When
from
you
John Wick 3.
Wait, what?
Is that the name of the character?
It's
in that?
TikTok man. Yeah.
Oh my god. Another TikTok is the old TikTok from Return to Oz.
Oh yeah,
which is a very interesting but
terrifying movie.
That is terrifying. But TikTok's a good guy in that movie. So David Quick is this character they talk about being kind of like who's the Joker that flew too close to the sun? Icarus, yes, thank you, God. I need to brush up on my history there. But he is, his great-grandfather is David Quick, I think. So Andrew Quick is the TikTok man, and we learn that when we get to the section where Randall Flagg appears to him as, it's not Farson, but who does he say he is at that?
I don't remember. It is something with an F. It's like, I'm Mr. Fellows now. I don't remember. But yeah, he's basically the same as the Man in Black.
Yeah, it's Brian Fellows.
Brian
Starry
Fellows.
Planet.
Richard Fannin. Fannin.
And the RF initials.
Yeah.
There's like 7 or 8 versions but if you see RF, it's Randall Flagg.
I like the idea. I think the image of TikTok man, I always thought he looked like Conan the Barbarian, but very sophisticated, or like He-Man or something, you know what I mean? But I like the idea that Jake mentions when he throws the knife at one of his peons and kills her. He says that he thinks that he's actually faster than Roland, and I like that, because then you're like, oh, there's some villains here that might even be like a real possible threat to the group, which I feel like a lot of stories and a lot of books and movies don't do that. They're always henchmen, but you always know they're going to be easily killed, like Gasher. But even though TikTok man is very weird and kind of just this weird disjointed figure that doesn't feel like he belongs in this world, I do like the idea that he's like this formidable foe almost.
He kind of reminds me of the villain in Highlander. There's a guy with like a leather jacket and he's bald.
Yes,
and he's huge.
Clancy Brown.
Yeah.
Clancy Brown. He'd be a great TikTok man.
Oh man, yeah.
Oh man, we gotta cast this.
Another great casting would be Robert Zadar. Just putting that out there. Okay. Anyway, carry on.
Again, when I first read the book, and even reading it now, I get it, but I didn't like the idea of Gasher and the TikTok man, that whole scenario. I think they could have just ran into like some gang fights in Lud trying to get to Blaine. I don't think we needed all of this stuff because to me, it kind of slows everything down again, and the payoff isn't as... we split up the group again. Because, Eddie and Susanna are off trying to find Blaine, and then you have Roland and Oja. And it's like, I didn't feel like you needed to do that. I think they all could have been together just traversing Lud, trying to get, almost like Escape from New York,
Yeah, I think that literally there's points in these books where King is just trying to make it longer. I'm convinced of this because he said something like, he set out to write the world's longest... whatever you want to call this fantasy sci-fi epic. And I literally sometimes I'm like, dude, it's my one bone to pick with him, if you will, is sometimes I just wish he would take like one or two words out of the sentence because the sentences are awesome, but like you didn't need to put the second adjective in there. Just take it out, man. Like just stop. Just like, can you just fucking put down the typewriter? But that's King for you. I mean, you love him, you hate him for the same reasons, He goes on, and I agree. I think there's certain things in the pacing of these books. It's like he just could have just abridged this whole thing.
Yeah, I think that section for me is kind of neither here or there. I don't think you really need it, especially right after the Dutch Hill sequence. I think you could have done something else in Lud or done the entire Blaine section in this book. And then, because it's such a small part of both books. But no spoilers. But speaking of Blaine, let's get to the big baddie of this whole thing, who's in the book for like 10 pages. Blaine the Mono, aka Blaine the Pain, aka Charlie the Choo Choo, who is the Southeast traveling train. I think that the descriptions of Blaine are really cool. I like the fact that Jake, even though Jake, and this is how we know that Jake has a bit of the shine, is that even though we know Jake's been doubled and he has all these visions of Midworld and stuff, how does he know and why does he know about Blaine in detail before they even gets back to Midworld through the Charlie the Choo Choo book and that Beryl Evans wrote, which is also a book that you can now get, which I really wanted to get and read before we did this pod, but I unfortunately did not get to do that. Y'all like Blaine?
Blaine's a pain. So the Harry Potter ride, is it Gringotts?
Yeah.
In Universal. So when you're on the train,
oh, you mean
there's like the connecting,
the Hogwarts Express.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've not been on it, but I've watched the video.
Oh, it's really
through.
Cool. Yeah, I've been on it.
Yeah. But there's the LED screens, right?
Yes.
So when you look out, it projects the Harry Potter universe. But on Blaine, he also has that, and at a certain point, he makes it turn invisible, so it just feels like they're floating above this horrible landscape. But
Blaine sounds like such a dumb idea as a villain, and when you're first introduced to him, he's also very silly and just weird, and it's a little off-putting. But I wasn't necessarily afraid of Blaine until they get onto Blaine, because all of that stuff and the idea of possibly crashing the train with them all on it, what you were saying with everything disappearing, and then all of a sudden you just feel like you're flying over the wastelands and seeing all these terrible creatures, and I mean that's horrifying to me.
Yeah, I mean Blaine is weird because I don't know why I like the character. In some ways it's like you're scared of like the world's most evil nerd. Like, he's like so annoying and like just like, let's do riddles and like, and everything about him is just unbearable. But it works. I don't know why this evil nerd maniacal insane train. He's a crazy train. I'm gonna
crazy train.
Yeah,
off the roof.
Yep.
I think you're right. I ended up really loving Blaine, and he's kind of like he's got a bit of a fan favorite. I think that again, the Lord of the Rings thing, it's very prevalent. The whole Gollum and the riddles in the dark to get to the next section, and you've got to defeat him with the use of riddles, and which is clearly a throwback to that.
Again, that's like the tropes. Like he has to get the fantasy tropes in there, but he does it in a way that's like very self-aware, which is, it's just interesting. This whole thing is like a postmodern Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, and then I think what's also one of the more interesting things about Blaine is that he has some real knowledge of our world as well. Talks in Humphrey Bogart and John Wayne voices. He's gone crazy. Much like, again, North Central Positronics probably responsible. He's losing his mind. Doesn't have an enemy anymore. He was built to serve the people, and the people started to treat him like a god. So then he started treating them as if he was their god, and it's almost like he's too perfect. It's Skynet, you know. And I think that the idea of like little Blaine talking, and which I think is really annoying in the book, but just like, oh, you know, you're gonna wake him up, oh, you know, it's just like this really silly thing going on.
He gasses the whole city too,
yeah,
which is pretty insane. And
he kills everyone, and probably kills like everyone in River Crossing too. Yeah, although they say something about like the winds maybe protecting them, but
they're dead.
They're probably dead, right? Antolith is gone, the way of the dinosaur. But yeah, I think Blaine's a really interesting addition, and I love the idea that Blaine can read people's, the way they speak and knows when they're lying. I mean, it's kind of terrifying. I mean, you can't do anything. He's constantly watching you, constantly measuring your heart rate and just everything. It's Big Brother times 10.
But I like how Roland, because he's so adaptable, and he's the one that kind of figures out how to address this AI that's super intelligent, right? He kind of stands up for himself, but in a way that's just like, I don't care about you. And you can see it intrigues Blaine because he's never met someone quite like Roland.
Yeah, where he realizes that, oh shit, like I'm not a god. Like I've just been kind of fooling myself. Then I forgot there was a time when gunsling, like I served man basically.
Yeah, and Roland kind of withholds some information, and he knows that the guy enjoys these riddles. And he just sort of, I don't know, he kind of finesses the situation in a way that you could see the other characters are looking at Roland and they're like, wow, this guy really is pretty.
And what's great about that too, Dan, though, is the idea that even from Roland's perspective, he's still worried that Blaine's going to pick up on the fact. So even Roland is like scared of Blaine, which again, that really amps up the stakes and makes Blaine like a real formidable foe. I also like the idea that Blaine is actually the one that saves Jake and opens the door for Roland, which is, maybe he's a hero of Midworld. Or that the idea that when he mentions playing the Wagog music, that it's played on one of the levels of the tower. So it's like Blaine really knows a lot. I wish we could pick Blaine's mind more about the world. If this were like the early 2000s, late 90s, there'd be like like an app on, like a widget or something on AOL that would be like ask Blaine questions, like the Googly Minotaur, that Radiohead app, that was out there for a while you could speak to.
Smarter Child, the chat bot that you would talk
the
to
chat bot.
that I would just abuse. Yeah.
Obviously we'll continue to talk about that character. One other minor character is Patricia, the other train that commits suicide, which is very sad.
Forgot about her.
And Patricia goes, she's like northeast or north south, whatever, the opposite way of Blaine. Blaine, he doesn't have like a kind word for Patricia, just kind of writes her off, but it's just sad. But Blaine is the first person to also mention Endworld, where the Dark Tower is, so we know that he knows where he's going. I also love the little map from Lud to Topeka, and I love that it's Topeka. Is one of the other worlds of Midworld, which is strange.
Yeah, which does tie back into the Wizard of Oz in the next book.
Exactly. And there's a lot of I think I'll just mention it here. At the Wonderful Land of Oz, page 59, blatantly talking about Wizard of Oz. They just talk about how Roland's the Eagle Scout of Oz. It's like, yeah, like reaching to get to that, which is strange. They just mentioned that's the first time they mention it. And then we talked about TikTok and just the idea of TikTok and Return to Oz. That's more of a room 237 for you. But Blaine's also a bit like Smog. He breathes blue fire. He's this giant beast, that's like stopping them from getting there. And then the whole Gollum thing. Susanna mentions that the Wastelands look like the cracks of doom from the Lord of the Rings. And then Blaine is even referred to as Oz the Great and Terrible. Jake mentions that he thinks that. So it's just like there's a lot of little Wizard of Oz throw-ins there, which are important to remember as we continue. I think we've gotten through all of our characters, though. If we think of any others that are worth mentioning, but I think that's pretty much everybody worth mentioning in this book. A lot of new characters, which is fun, and a lot of new villains, which is fun. Pretty much the same good guys, though. Except we bring back Jake.
Gasha.
Gasha, gotta love that
Gasha.
real Gash. So that moves us to our next category, which I believe is the cemetery.
What's the bottom of the truth?
Well, sometimes that is better. The person you put up there ain't the person that comes back. It may look like that person, but it ain't that person. Because whatever lives in the ground beyond that cemetery ain't human at all.
So the cemetery is a creepy little place where we like to talk about what scared us about this book. Is there a lot of scary stuff in this book? There's a handful of things. We already mentioned Shardik the bear dying, falling apart, sneezing weird electronic maggots and things onto Eddie's face, and it is disgusting what's happening to that bear. I feel so bad for Shardik. What else? Laura, you had something else?
Yeah, there were a number of things. Sorry, I'm trying to look at my tiny notes. I mean, like we talked about Gasher already. I did find him legitimately frightening just because of his brutality, and pretty much, the sense of going insane and doubling is somewhat frightening. It's not like, I am scared in the sense of watching a horror movie, but it's unsettling. The main thing is, I hesitate to call it this, but I think it is like the basically the demon rape scene. In the middle where, while they're bringing Jake through, it's a complicated scene for a lot of reasons, but I found it obviously extremely unsettling because basically Roland is like, if it's a chick, this demon's a chick, I'll take it. And if it's a dude, like, take one for the team. And she's like, all right, Susanna is. And when it actually arrives and basically she air quotes lets it happen because she's trying to protect Eddie from this thing while he does the ritual to draw Jake. But the way it's written, saying things like it
It's pretty detailed.
Fucked with an icicle is the phrase I chose to write down. It's very visceral. It sounds very painful and horribly traumatizing, but she does sort of own it in the middle and is like, no, I'm not going to let this just happen to me. I'm going to dominate you while it's happening. But, just the way it plays out, I found very unsettling. And I also struggle with, they don't really, obviously it will play a role later plot-wise, but just in terms of the narrative of this book, it's like after it happens, like I don't know that Susanna's reaction to it and other people's reaction to her, I don't know. There was something that felt not quite right about it to me. Just kind of like, well, did that? Let's let's carry on with the quest. I found it to be a very dramatically upsetting event to have in the middle of this book. I don't know. It's complicated.
I totally agree. I think it's horrifying what happens to her. I also think is when Roland's talking about, well, if it's a guy you'll take it, if it's a girl I'll take it, and then she says, what if it swings both ways? And he's just kind of like winks at her, like, yeah, well,
very heteronormative.
Maybe
demon.
we'll take them together, And I think that's kind of interesting. I kind of wish that's what happened. Yeah. And it kind of is, but I just want to see that crazy threesome, y'all. Yeah. No, but it's really uncomfortable and really awful. I think it's the reason I think she's able to just kind of, they don't really go into the after effects of it is because Detta is really the one that takes it on, and then Detta leaves. So, and Detta can handle that kind of thing. But it is uncomfortable. It's disturbing. Roland gets, his, and the gunslinger with the Oracle, has its way with Roland, and obviously, this all comes together. But it is a hard scene.
It's kind of
sequence.
The little humor that is in it is that the demon, as he's fucking her, she starts really fucking him, and you can tell it's like that. Oh, okay, this like trying to almost like pull back, and she's just like riding him to death.
Yeah. So we also feel bad for the demon. No, not at all. I mean, fuck up Susanna. The spider attack in the mansion I thought was really kind of creepy. I just don't like spiders. I'm not a big fan of arachnids, and those things just like crawling down and just like biting Jake and things is just like that really got to me. And also just the mansion monster I think was really terrifying when I first read the book.
Yeah, the thing that scared me was more the sense of claustrophobia within the city. When Jake is getting spirited away by Gasher, everything is so claustrophobic. It's just junky, and that Roland is like, man, every minute that this guy is running with Jake, he's getting further lost in this labyrinth, and it's less likely I'm going to get him. And the fact that ZZ Top is blasting the Velcro Fly song.
That's the real horror.
That's the real horror.
Right?
I don't like ticking clocks. I don't like noise when I'm trying to relax. And the idea of a song playing on loop for decades is, especially that song, ugh.
Speaking of the old Lud, the little Lord Fauntleroy child that runs out and tries to kind of talk to them, and then you realize it's like this strange dwarf man that ends up throwing a grenade and blowing itself up. Like
it's like the end of a Don't Look Back or whatever.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, yeah.
Donald Sutherland.
Oh man. Oh, what if Donald Sutherland was in this? Who would he be? You think young Donald Sutherland would have been a good Roland?
No, but he could have been somebody. I feel like
could have been Stephen Deshane.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
I
his
could
dad.
see- yeah,
Totally. I would actually. That
absolutely.
was exactly what I first thought of because he's got that kind of quiet dignity.
We've kind of mentioned a lot of things that scare us, I think, in talking about the book, because there are a lot of really genuinely scary moments. I think that's really it for me, though. Was there anything? I mean, Blaine and even just the idea of the Wastelands is scary. That it's not even a nuclear war. It was something worse. They mentioned that, and I thought that was always interesting to me. That like, what could be worse than nuclear war? And they try to describe it, and it's almost beyond our comprehension.
Yeah, I'm glad they included the illustrations of the Wasteland, the monsters, because I do feel like we kind of blew past it. And you think of how much distance they've covered so far on Roland's quest, and then they, on Blaine, are just going so fast, and they're covering thousands of miles, which it almost would have been interesting to see them have to traverse through the Wastelands with
and
the
they
monsters.
and Blaine kind of threatens, well, maybe I'll just drop you off right here, like with these pterodactyl creatures that right there, and that's really creepy. And yeah, but
I wouldn't be surprised though if like we have, because Stephen King's so prolific, he might write a book that gets deeper into the Wastelands. Like I still think he's going to add another Dark Tower
I've got
entry.
something to say when we get to Little King's Dominion.
Tantalizing.
Yeah, but I think we've all had a bit of a chill. We're ready to leave the cemetery and move into our next section, where we'll just briefly talk about some of the things that didn't work for us, called Misery.
She died. She just slipped away.
Slipped away! Slipped away! She didn't just slip away! You did it! 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 You murdered my misery!
Annie!
I already said what didn't really work for me, which was the Gasher TikTok stuff. I think now that I know it's just part of the story, I enjoyed it a little bit more this time around, because I knew it wasn't going to be a huge part, that it was going to be, buttoned up in this book and then we move on. I was able to enjoy it a little bit more and really read it, and not. I think when we got there, I just felt like it was slowing down. I didn't care about these characters, and I was great, because I thought like this is where it was going. But then realizing that they're only going to be in that little section, I was able to enjoy it a little bit more. But yeah, I think that's really the only thing I don't like about this book. It's a strange. There's a lot that happens in this book, and a lot of it I like. But the only thing I didn't really like upon the first read was Gasher and TikTok Man. I mean, Gasher's creepy, but I just didn't like where the story was going because of the whole thing I said before with Jake splitting up from the group again. It just felt like, why did we even do this? Kind of like Mindhunter season 2, if anyone's seen that. I don't want to say they introduced something huge in the end of that first season, and they talk about it in the first episode, and then they never go back to it. It doesn't affect the characters at all. It's really weird. Maybe it does in season 3. I don't know. But anywho, that's my little rant on the misery section of Wastelands. Was there anything that didn't work for you, like flat out at all?
This is a very tiny bone to pick, a pinky bone. But I can't stand when Eddie says things like, Jesus, pumpkin pie Christ, or weeping, creeping Jesus. Oh, geez, guys, from Brooklyn. I can't. I just can't. It curdles my blood. I'm like, he has that great line. Like, this wasn't even released as a single, but he has to throw a Jesus, pumpkin pie Christ.
That's how people from New York talk, though.
Hey, that's how people from Maine talk. Apparently, that kind of talk is in a lot of King books. I have a really funny mention of one of Eddie's lines coming up in this category. So get ready for that.
All right, I guess I will gird my loins, as it were.
Dan, was there anything that just flat out didn't work for you?
I've gone kind of back and forth, and it's not that it didn't work, but structurally, this book is kind of strange because it starts with them fighting the bear, and you're like, okay, this is where this is going. Then they're traveling, and then Blaine really only gets introduced at the end. And when I think back on the Dark Tower, I always think of like, this is the Blaine book, but it really isn't. He almost plays a bigger role in the next entry, Wizard and Glass. And, you know, I don't really mind. I kind of see these as like one continuous essay,
right?
But it is just a little bit weird how it's almost anticlimactic. Like, the city gets destroyed, they're on this train, and then it's just like, stay tuned, constant readers, for the next entry. And if I was reading these when they had come out, it would probably be pretty frustrating, but luckily I could just hop to the next book.
Right. And it's like a little adventure serial. Like, you know, it's like The Deuce season 2, you know, like everything always starts in the middle of like a scene, you know, like my brother was mentioning that. And that's how it is. Like, we start off and he's already training them, and Shardik shows up like immediately. You know, it's like you're thrust right into it, and then it ends on that cliffhanger. When I was remembering this book, I thought, which ends up being the first section of Wizard and Glass, was in this book.
Yeah.
So that's why I was taking a lot of certain notes and mentioning a lot of things, because I thought, oh, we're going to get to that. I totally forgot that it ends halfway through the Blaine story, and that we get most of the Blaine story in the next book.
Yeah, so I've been reading Wizard and Glass, and I had to actually pull back because I was nervous I would start bleeding them together for this podcast. But yeah, in my mind, the story with Blaine had ended by the time this book was over. But then rereading it, you're like, oh, no, King really pushed it down the road.
I was like, oh, we only have 10 more pages left, so they're not going to wrap this up. Like, I guess.
And I really want to talk, because I do love the final sequence with Blaine. I think it's really clever.
Yeah.
But stay tuned.
Yeah, stay tuned for the next book episode. Whenever we get to that. Now, here's the thing: if you were fans, I gotta think that one of the things that people didn't like about this book initially was that we didn't get Wizard and Glass for so long, and you end on that cliffhanger. I would have been so pissed. I would have hated that part of the book.
I had that same reaction. I was thinking if I was reading these like in real time as they were published, I would have been furious.
Yeah. And the idea that maybe Wizard and Glass would not have even come about, possibly, or that King was maybe going to hang up his hat, or had he died, like, we would have never known, and we would have ended on Blaine, you know?
Yeah. But I do like, though, the sequence of book 2, 3, 4, 5. I think that's the strongest section of the series. I've said this before too, like book 4. Billy Bumler just knocked something over. Book 4 is my favorite, but I do think, looking back, the lead in from 3 to 4 is actually pretty cool.
Yeah, no, I do like that. It's funny because clearly there wasn't a whole lot we didn't like. We're now starting to talk about things we did like in the section where we talk about things we didn't like. But no, it's
the thing I didn't like was that there was not enough to hate.
Exactly. Well, okay, we're moving out of our misery section into a section that you can be really long usually, so I think we're just gonna cut it down. It's called Word Processor of the God.
And we're gonna make a new rule. Whenever I'm in here, you hear me typing. Whether you don't hear me typing, what the fuck you hear me doing in here, when I'm in here, that means that I am working. That means don't come in. Now, do you think you can handle that?
Yeah.
Fine. Why don't you start right now and get the fuck out of here?
And this is a section where we talk about some of our favorite passages from the book. And sometimes we'll read some of these. I'm never great at this, but I did find a little section I want to read. It's page 33 of the Plume edition, where Roland ponders Shardik. And he says, or thinks, "Hello, stranger," he thought. "Hello, old friend. I never believed in you, not really. I believe Elaine did, and I know that Cuthbert did. Cuthbert believed in everything. But I was the hard-headed one, I thought you were only a tale of children, another wind which blew around in my old nurse's hollow head before finally escaping her jabbering mouth. But you were here all along, another refugee of the old times, like the pump at the way station and the old machines under the mountains. Are the slow mutants who worshipped those broken remnants the final descendants of the people who once lived in this forest and finally fled your wrath? I don't know. We'll never know. But it feels right. Yes, and then I came with my friends, my deadly new friends who were becoming so much like my deadly old friends. We came weaving our magic circle around us and around everything we touch, strand by poisonous strand, and now here you lie at our feet. The world has moved on again, and this time, old friend, it's you who have left behind. I like that little ponderance. I wish we got more of those little ponderances from Roland, and I'm sure we do, and I just don't remember.
No, yeah, I liked that a lot too, because it there are moments in this series when you actually reflect on how much time has passed and the fact that Roland has seen all of his friends and family and everything he ever knew pass away, but it doesn't feel like a reality except for those little moments. So that was tight. Sorry.
Does anyone else have a passage they'd like to read or a quote or anything that really stood out to them?
I have a few little lines that I wrote down. They're not as impactful as that passage you just read. They're like just little moments that, again, I found. This one I just found haunting is when Jeeves and Maude are leaving Susanna and Eddie at the Cradle of Blood.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And it's just a little moment. And so Jeeves and Maude are walking off and Susanna and Eddie are watching them go because they refuse to go into the train station. The two of them walked back in the direction from which they had come without another word. They did look back over their shoulders from time to time, however, and they were holding hands, Hansel and Gretel, lost in the deep, dark forest. Just that. Yeah, that was nice.
No, I like it. Dan, did you have something?
See the turtle, ain't he keen? All things serve the fucking beam. I do enjoy that. It's very folksy. A lot of these are Eddie quotes, but this one I like because it reminded me of Jaws. What we've got here is a lunatic genius ghost in the computer monorail that likes riddles and goes faster than the speed of sound. Welcome to the fantasy version of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. There's just so much in that statement.
Yeah, oh no. And that's Eddie's great because Eddie is really like any of us, just constantly referencing pop culture things. Not a lot to mine from this book. I think it's well written, and there wasn't a whole lot of it that I found hard to read or was just like, oh boy. But I really like that ponderance sequence. And then just some of the more quiet moments, like when Maude and when they leave, like you just read, and then also when they're leaving River Crossing. I think there's a little moment there that's really well written and well done.
There's one other quote too that I like that gives a lot of insight into Roland's character. And he says, it's just that I take riddling seriously. I was taught that the ability to solve them indicates a sane and rational mind. And there's a lot of foreshadowing there with how they end the riddle game. But it's also cool that, Roland talks a lot about his teacher, Court, was the best riddle solver, and that every year they would have an annual riddle contest to win a goose, and Court would almost always win it.
Again, this book is so... If you're looking for anything that's introduced in Midworld and you're like, where was that introduced? It's probably this book. Go back and reread it and it'll clear a lot of things up. I know it did for me. I was paying a lot more attention this time around because I just didn't realize how much information they were going to drop in this book about the lore. And like you were saying, in terms of trying to really build this world, it's a bit like Goblet of Fire in that sense. We're like, oh, Midworld's actually all of this, and there's all these different people and clans and all these things, and it takes 20 years to traverse that. And it's a real book builder. Okay, is there anything else? Any other bits of writing or?
I'll read one last little quote, and this is it, and then I die. This is just speaking to Jake's character a little bit. Yet there was deep steel in Jake Chambers, as surely as there was deep steel in Eddie and Susanna. Now it flashed out its dour blue lighthouse gleam in the darkness. There would be no giving up. Whatever was loose inside him might tear his sanity away from him in the end, but he would give it no quarter in the meantime. Yep.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
There's a lot of little moments like that I think in the book that are really solid. And we'd love to hear if the fans out there have any that we did not mention. Feel free to shoot those to us. We love interacting with y'all. We're going to move to our next category here, which is very short, I believe. And I don't even know if you two have anything for it, but I'm getting really hot and sexy over here, and I want a piece of pound cake.
After all you've been taught,
Everyone in bad, Mama. Everything in the sin.
come to your closet and pray. Ask to be forgiven.
He's a nice boy, Mom. You like him. You really like him, Mama.
That's how I talk when I'm getting really horny and just randy. Heart. Pound cake. I've only got 2 bits of pound cake. Page 96, when Jake is in the classroom and he goes into the closet and he wants the other world to be there and it's not, and he comes out, and then Petra Jesterling, she's down to clown, as it were. She says, she whispers in his ear, "Take me in there with you next time, then you'll have something to look at." I don't know any girls that were saying things like that to, maybe to other people, but
14, some hot tween action. I have one. One quote. Yeah. Similarly disgusting. So this is when Jake is on his way, I think, to Dutch Hill Mansion, and he's kind of wandering about the city, and he's sitting on some steps, and a cop spots him. A young woman, probably not a librarian, judging from the green silk hot pants and see-through blouse she was wearing, came wibble-wobbling up the sidewalk on a pair of purple fuck-me shoes with 3-inch heels. That's it. Just anytime, just the phrase "fuck me shoes" or "fuck me heels," and then just thinking, I just picture Stephen King typing that phrase and being like, yeah, that's a little edgy.
Tabby's walking. Yeah, Tabby's walking by the window, bringing in groceries. Yeah, I also don't see Jake saying that. You know what I mean?
Because this whole thing is from Jake's perspective. Yeah, but we just get this little insertion of I'm sorry. It's just I really just upset me and took me out of the scene.
My next. Dan, did you have anything else?
No, I'm not gonna talk about it.
Okay. Dan, keep playing it close to the chest. Page 341 is the only other one that I really had, which, well, we already mentioned some. Anytime Gasher's talking to Jake is just disgusting subtext. But page 341, Susanna talking about something not being blown out, flirting with Eddie at the cradle of Blaine. They're flirting and getting sexy in one of the most dire moments of the book. It's just so funny.
Oh yeah, I remember that, and I was just like, must we? Yes.
And they're both like, they're in their minds, they're like, we had to pull away because we wouldn't have been able to stop each other. You know, it's just their love, their hot, sexy love for each other. But really, that's pretty much it. It's very mild for this book. King got tired. He was in the cemetery land for most of this. Not too much pound cake.
We got another book coming up, and there's definitely some pound cake in that one.
Oh, some Ray of the Coos.
Oh God, the medical examination.
Oof, yikes. Okay, so I'm full. I've had my fill of hot, sexy pound cake.
I hate it.
We're gonna move into our next section, which is always fun, called King's Dominion.
There's another world out there. I know there is.
King's Dominion is also known as the things we glean along the beam, which are anything that talks about other Stephen King books and or other interesting things, bits and pieces of the Beam universe. Dan already mentioned on page 39 the bear, the fish, the lion, the bat, the turtle, the rat, dog, horse. You know, they're all of the Beam creatures, which I think is really cool. And as we all know, the turtle is a Beam creature from the book It, which is a great addition to the Guardians, I think, and just kind of nailing that in as the actual guardian of the Dark Tower universe. Does anybody else have anything? I've got a bunch.
Yeah, I'll just say that on top of that, it's sort of we were talking about this earlier. The house, the Dutch Hill mansion, and the Neibold house from It. Neibold. Oh God.
Neibold.
No,
Either one's great.
I'm gonna have a panic attack right now. They felt like they mirrored each other, and then if because in It that is sort of like his lair, and it has a sort of portal like quality to it. There's some argument to be made for that being the other end of the beam, so that could be interesting to think about. I've got a few that I can go through really quickly. You probably cover them. Aaron Deepnow in the Manhattan Restaurant of the Mind is reading a book called The Plague, which we think I assume is a sort of play on The Stand, which comes into play in the next book significantly. And this is a little weird one that I'll put, and I only thought of this because we did the Langoliers episode, and I know that like I feel like this is a reverse one, like he did this in the Langoliers in reference to the rose, but I feel like the sound and the feeling that you get near the rose, or that we hear Jake describing, is very similar to the way he describes when they finally get back into their own timeline, but they end up in the future a little bit with this like humming sense of rightness and these rising voices and stuff. So I think that might have been an in reverse, and that book also had a lot of like going through tears and portals and stuff. Not to bring the Langoliers into this.
I was going to say, I think you're the first person to really bring the Langoliers into the Dark Tower world.
And it's in reverse. It's really that he brought the Dark Tower world into the Langoliers, and I'm so sorry. I regret everything.
No, that's really interesting. I never thought about that, but that is true. That is very similar. I didn't think about that at all. Yeah.
This one has less connections than some of the other books, actually. This is where he starts making more connections to other types of pop culture. But Charlie the Choo Choo, the book, does appear in a few of the other novels. It's actually in the book Cell.
Oh, really?
They're at like a county expo, and somebody casually mentions that there's a Charlie the Choo Choo book, which is just kind of fun.
That's interesting. Yeah, I've yet to read Cell, but that's cool that it's still showing up in books past the prime of these books.
Yeah,
way
there's a lot
after.
of little references, and then there's also like a gossip tabloid. I forget the name of it, but it makes appearances. It's not really here nor there, but it makes several appearances in other books, and I think they mention it briefly in this. It's just like the name of the publication.
I thought I had that too, but I don't think I do here. I've got a few. I'll just run through them real quick. Mostly it's just mentions the turtle and things, but Roland recites the turtle poem. Page 55, they talk about turtle wax. When talking about cleaning Susanna's wheelchair, they find one of the 12 portals, 6 paths to the Dark Tower. The great old ones created the beams. We talked about that a bit, about how the beams bind and hold. Mention of the turtle luxury condos, where I believe the rose is found. There's a sign that is about the Sombra Real Estate Corp, which will show up again. Page 158, it says, if I stand, if I can be true, I'll see the rose. And I like, they say that a lot in the Dark Tower series, or at least in this book alone, is the whole idea of standing, making a stand. And I like that allusion to the stand. The entrance of Lud, is guarded by a huge stone turtle. It's funny because for being Shardik's path, there's a lot of turtle stuff bleeding over from the opposite end of this path, which is the turtle.
You walk the other way, it's bears, just nothing but bears.
Yeah, just bears. 100 years of bears here in Chicago. Page 321, they mention King's obviously a big fan of Shirley Jackson. They mention the lottery connection in Lud and how they're slowly killing people in that way. One of my favorite mentions is page 389, when Richard Fannin, aka the Dark Man, and it's the Dark Man because he mentions the line that an old loyal friend of his used to say is "My life for you," which is the Trash Can Man, obviously from The Stand, and I just love that's just like it's concrete at that point that it's Randall Flagg. And my favorite little bit is the idea that you were saying that you wish they'd go into the wastelands more and all those creatures and things, but they do. The mist is those creatures.
Oh, that's
so
you're right.
it's a thinny to the world, but it's a thinny to the wastelands, and all because a lot of those creatures are very, very, very similar to what they mentioned in here, and I really love that. I really like the idea of there being a thinny somewhere out there in the wastelands that these creatures are just wandering into.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of King kind of reference. What do they call it? Like the there's like a space they sort of describe in some of his books, but
the thinny.
These are, even beyond the thinny, but it's just like this is this other world where there are these monsters that are just on the edge of breaking into our world.
Yeah. I think I just love that bit, and if you look at it like that, I don't know if that's 100% concrete, but I really think that's what's going
I think you're
on.
Right on.
Was there anything else that y'all noticed during this?
Well, just in the mist, I think in the film adaptation of it, the kid has like a Dark Tower poster in his bedroom. Anyway, I think that so that was also like a little nod to that same concept.
The main character, he's an artist and he's drawing the
That's
Dark
right.
Tower.
That's what it is. Yeah.
Cover. Yeah.
It's during It also in the original It, he's painting a gunslinger. I think John Ritter's character.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in the beginning.
Love all these connections, and this is the fun thing is that when I read all these books first, that I was familiar with a lot of these ideas and a lot of these nods because I had watched all the adaptations growing up, but I had not read the books. So I was really excited to read the books because I knew that they had mentioned all these things in the Dark Tower already. So it actually I think it's one way if you read the books first and then read the Dark Tower series, I think you'd enjoy it just as much. But it's fun reading the books, and every blue moon there'll be like a little nugget, and you're so ingrained in me after reading these now twice. I love finding those little bits and pieces of King's Dominion in other King books.
Can I mention one last thing that may or may not be of import? On the fence around the rose, there's Bango Skank graffiti. That's it.
Yep.
I just wanted to say Bango Skank out loud.
I love it. And moving on to our next little section here, I've got a few little fun ones. It's called Room 237.
What about room 237?
Room 237?
You're scared of room 237, ain't you?
No, I ain't.
Mr. Allen, what is in room 237?
And these are the real reaches that are not real, but real to me in my mind as I was reading. Page 32, Eddie says, "Holy Mary, Mother of God." And I like to think that in some alternate universe, he's the cop from the Goonies that says that at the end of the Goonies when the ship comes out. Page 38, there's mention of the Fellowship. This is just another Lord of the Rings nod, really. That's actually more legit than silly. Jake Chambers says on page 152, he was walking through the tangled remains of an ancient forest, a dead zone of fallen trees. Maybe Johnny Smith was going to show up in this series. You never know. Maybe he dies and then shows up at the way station. No, it's not going to happen. Although that would be great. We love a little telepath in the quartet. Page 208, Dutch Hill Mansion. Jake uses a last-ditch talisman, and that's obviously just a reference to the Talisman, the book. But there actually is another nod, I think, to the Talisman in the Manhattan Restaurant of the Mind. Someone mentioned, I think it's Calvin Tower. I think he says something. He says a quote that's something that is said in the Talisman, and I never picked up on that, but I read that a little while ago. So that's great. That's all of our connections, which is really, really exciting because we're getting to the nitty gritty here. We're getting down to our final thoughts. But before we get there, I want to talk briefly about the adaptations, which there hasn't been an adaptation exactly of this, but the Dark Tower movie does incorporate a lot of the Wastelands into it. What do you've seen the Dark Tower film, Laura?
I actually haven't watched it because I'm just trying to, enjoy the book series first. And I've heard just nothing but terrible things about the film.
It ain't great. Well, we'll talk really briefly about this, but Dan, you've watched it, right?
Yeah, I was actually
you were on the episode, right?
And I was in such a bad mood because we went from the theater to the studio, and I needed time to decompress. But you're right.
Not to get to, there's not really a whole lot of spoilers per se, but
Spoiler,
they
it sucks.
use ideas from this book. They take them and they just kind of use them and they don't go into them. The way Jake gets to Midworld in that film is through the Dutch Hill Mansion, but it's really not half as cool. It's like this weird electronic door that's in there. It's not like he's not drawn or pulled in by anyone else. It's just like they took the idea and did it. And I know that the movie is supposed to be like the next round of things, and not to get too spoilerific, but it's just it doesn't. It's just kind of like, oh, we took some great ideas from the Wastelands and then just kind of like threw them in here, but they don't spend time with them. They don't do what I would have hoped they would have done.
Yeah, they didn't really earn it. They did pull a lot, like you said, going through the door, but it's so quick that it happens in the movie that
it's so quick.
He's even rolling briefly and then sort of separated. It's like you don't have these like multiple books or what feels like years almost where they've been separated, and then when they finally reunite, it's such a big moment.
But
and
that
the movie
is
just kind of brushes by. It's also like a 90-minute runtime for
Yeah.
this film.
Oh,
which
yeah, it was
you're combining
crazy.
like 3 books
Crazy.
that could each be a series on their own.
And Jake, his whole trajectory, I mean, it's basically the doubling thing here, except you don't get the whole he died before it, but his entry into this is the Wastelands story, basically. Like, he's going to school, he's having all these thoughts, he keeps seeing the Dark Tower and all these things. It's just unfortunately used in a film that's not very good, and which sucks, because then we can't really see the Dutch Hill and all that stuff actually happening, going down.
The thing that made me the saddest was the fact that I'm pretty sure it did terrible box office, and that means we're going to get less entries for the Dark Tower series. So I'm holding out hope that the TV show or the streaming show is going to, I don't know, kind of redeem it, and that this way people will actually pay attention and keep making films about this, because I think it could be so great to see this on screen. It just was such a, I don't know, paint job. It was just terrible. I still love Stephen King.
Yeah, I love Stephen. I love Stephen King. No, yeah, the adaptation is not good. I don't like that they used a lot of Wastelands, because they misuse parts that I love and not very well. I'm very interested in seeing the new series that's coming out on Amazon. I don't know if we'll ever get to this kind of section of it. It sounds like they're going to be really steeped in Midworld, but maybe one day we'll see Dutch Hill. I mean, we saw the alternate version of Dutch Hill very recently in It Chapter 2, which this loser did not really love. So let's move to our last and final section, if you all agree to move on to that section, called our overall thoughts.
Dad, can we go now?
You ready?
Yeah, we've been ready for an hour.
Okay, I'll be right there.
You said that a half hour ago. Yeah, my dad's weird. He gets like that when he's writing.
Dan, why don't you kick us off with what you thought? Give us your nose rating for this beast of a book. What do you think about The Wastelands?
In terms of bright red, shiny, did I get those in the right order?
Bright red, Pennywise.
Bright red, shiny, Pennywise clown noses. I would actually give this 4.5.
Oh,
I
wow.
really
Wow.
like this entry. Book 2 sucked me in. I've said this in the previous episode. And I really enjoy where this is going. And I didn't know that the best was yet to come. But when I was reading this book the first time, it just really sucked me in. And I was there. And I like the idea that now we've all kind of established these characters, but now we're going to get to know each other. And by getting to know each other, they sort of learn about themselves, right? So Roland has to deal with Eddie. He's kind of a pain in the ass in book 2. But now you're starting to see he's getting a little more sympathetic, and he does see the value of Eddie. And especially at the start of book 4, I think Eddie proves that he is a rightful member. I like Susanna, too, taking to the gunslinging training so quickly. And she does have that killer instinct that I think, there's just certain people that have an intensity. And I think Roland immediately picks up on that with her. Yeah, I think, like we were saying, the ZZ Top Velcro fly, which apparently is about stripper clothes that are sealed with Velcro, according to the music video. Coordinated by Paul Abdul, the music video, by the way.
Oh.
Choreography, I should say. But it's I like that it's branching out into not just the typical pop culture, but it's starting to get weird. And it just continues to get stranger and weirder.
Oh, yeah.
And it just was sweet.
Nice.
That's all I got to say.
Laura, what did you think? Wait, how many bright red Pennywise clown noses did you give this book?
My rating on the BRPCN scale, I also gave it a 4.5. I really enjoyed it. It did suck me into, and I loved all the lore and world building, and even things that I didn't think were 100% successful still just like kept me on the hook. I want to know more. I'm now, it's almost like it did the thing to my brain where you start being like, everything's connected, the synchronicities. What does it all mean? It just really hits that spot that a series like this needs you to get you really into it.
I wasn't quite sure what I was going to give this book. I think the first time around I might have given it about a 4, but I think I'm leaning more on the 4.5. There really was not anything I disliked about this time around. I really thoroughly enjoyed it. I found myself burning through it towards the end. I love, again, the world building is excellent. I love where everybody's at. It's the book you long to go back to as we continue, because things just get, obviously our heroes just go through a lot worse. And it makes you long for the times where there are moments where they're all together and having this adventure. And right now it still feels like an adventure. Although they're dealing with awful, terrible things, it still very much feels like an adventure book. And as we get further, it just becomes more and more serious and dour. And, it's an adventure, but it's a deadly adventure. So yeah, I'm going to give it 4.5 bright red Pennywise clown noses. That's a solid 4.5 across the board from these losers. Aisha was originally going to be on this episode. She was going to give me her nose rating, but I didn't get it in time. So if you're curious about what the other losers gave this, reach out on socials, and I'm sure they will let you know. We obviously here we're big tower heads. I know Dan is. Hopefully Laura will have you on for the next Wizard and Glass episode when we get there.
My tower is growing. Yes.
Yes.
Oh, save that for the pound cake. No, but I got to say it is nice too, because I feel like the last few episodes I've been on, I've been kind of drinking the haterade, because I was on like the Langoliers book and mini series, and there's just so I
most people
just want to
agree with
reaffirm that I am a huge Stephen King fan, and it's nice to have one of these books where you're just like, yeah, I can really sink my teeth into this one.
Yeah, no, I'm glad. I always wanted to be on all the Dark Tower books because I felt like they were for sure surefire books that I would be excited to talk about, and in a positive way. I feel like a lot of our fans question whether we're Stephen King fans at all sometimes because we're just so negative about some of those adaptations and things that are out there. But God damn it, if you like everything blindly, you're not really a fan.
Are you saying
you've got to call him out? You've got to call him out. Yeah. I think our quartet here. I think we all feel a bit the same about King. We love him, and he's clearly capable of great things, but if we can't call him out on the things that are weak, what are we doing here? What world are we living in? Clearly
just
not.
Approach things
world.
with a critical mind. It's don't just hate things for the sake of hating them, and don't love them for the sake of loving them. Just look at things critically.
Exactly.
That being said, Langoliers is a piece of shit.
Yes.
Agree.
Well, thanks again to our constant listeners for continuing to check out the Losers Club week to week. Please be sure to spread the word about the podcast and leave us a review on iTunes, Facebook, Stitcher, wherever you listen to us. That helps us greatly, and we really do appreciate it. That was our third Dark Tower book, but don't worry, we're not through the keyhole just yet. We'll actually be opening a new door that leads to the future. Our next book that we're going to be covering is actually Dr. Sleep, in conjunction with the film that will be coming out in the beginning of November. So if you're looking as to what to read next, jump to the future and read Dr. Sleep. Trust me, you're going to enjoy that episode and hopefully enjoy the film, which I think looks pretty good. I'm excited to do that. I don't think any of us are going to be on that episode no, probably not. But be sure to read that next. We look forward to next time. But until then, long days and pleasant nights.
I got some hot friends. God, I got some hot friends. I got some hot friends. God, I got some hot friends. But you know you want somebody to treat you good.
Consequence Podcast Network.